Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you another video. All right, so two more players I want to talk about: LeBaron Philon and Yaxel Lendeborg. Now we're gonna see if I remember their names by the end of this video because this tends to be how it goes. I said it the right way the first time. We'll see what happens. But I did homework on Philon yesterday. Probably the least amount of homework that I did on anybody. I was really busy yesterday, and just didn't find myself zeroing in on his information like I did other guys. But I did watch highlights of him before even starting the process of listening to others talk about him. And what I took from him was he has a really interesting ball handling ability. He's not like Iverson or some type of Kyrie necessarily, but he is speedy, and he does have an interesting handle. He's one of those guys where it's like, if you're gonna do NBA 2K, you're gonna have to make an entirely new template for his dribbling style. He kicks his leg up a little bit when he dribbles. He don't dribble like other people. You can't just put a template down there and say this is LeBaron Philon. No. You're gonna have to make a whole new build and movement for this player. You can't use the stock build for him and just think that the deck moves of other guys is gonna work for this dude. No, he has his own way of doing things in that regard. So that's what stood out for me. Score, definitely a score. He's doing a good job of putting buckets up. He stayed in school after being a freshman last year who was projected to go in the second round. I actually think I did a little homework on him in the second round last year, but I didn't really remember. But I remember the name, LeBaron Philon. I think that's how you pronounce it. I think he was out of Alabama, I believe is the school he went to or goes to. And yeah, and went back to school and had a really good season. You know, he was able to play his way into the lottery this year. Sometimes going back to school is the right way to go for your draft stock. He was a second round guy. In fact, Lendeborg is as well, who had fantastic seasons and have now played their way into the lottery. So I think, in listening to the comps that other people were saying, I might be a little higher on him than some of the people I was listening to, just based on the little that I saw. I think he could be a hell of a microwave scorer. Lou Williams type of scorer. I think he's been more so compared to like Dennis Schroeder. I heard some names of some guys in that realm of things, and if you can have that type of career, it'd be good. But I think they expect, the people I was listening to, basically they expect that his ceiling will be backup point guard at a very high level, maybe 6-man type guy. And I think that's cool. His defense is fair. His offense, he can really score. He can light it up. 6'4", I believe he is. 6'6" wingspan, I think they said. Don't quote me on that, but I believe I have that right. And, it's a good build for a point guard. Not necessarily a prolific playmaker, but definitely somebody who can help run the offense from a secondary guard position or primary guard position off of your bench. So, yeah, I think the problem for me is if I'm going to take a guy in the top 12, I want to believe that his ceiling is higher than that. I feel like I can, on the high end of the second round, low end of the first round, target guys that are going to be career backups. You know what I mean? So you in the first round for me, if I look at him and I say he's never going to be good enough to be a starter, then I can't see myself taking him in this top 12 of this draft. But having said that, I still have a lot of homework to do on the players who are projected to go behind him, and if I have a lesser idea about them, then that'll adjust my opinion. So that's really what it is. But Philon's a guy, based on listening to other people and a little homework that I saw on him, he should be able to contribute to an NBA floor right away. He's fast as all hell. He's a really nice scoring guard. He can make some. He can defend some. And so with that being said, I think he's a very safe pick, and he has progressed quite a bit from his freshman year to his sophomore season. So if he continues to progress as he has been from year to year, he can really light it up, and it's going to be incumbent upon the team that gets him to have a role for him that will allow for him to have the ball in his hands. And I just think that once again, and we've had this conversation throughout the course of the last several weeks, the guard position is so very plentiful in the NBA to where you likely see a guy like that having to fight tooth and nail for minutes, having to fight some in the G League, just off of the strength of the depth of most teams at the guard spot. And so that's my concern with that being the case. How comfortable do I feel taking a guard who I project to be a backup, a high-level backup, but a backup within the top 12? It's a guard-heavy draft, and I feel like most teams in general may not necessarily have a need for guard. So it's not really about whether or not Philon or Berry's, player Brown can be helpful in the NBA. It's a question of where and how soon can they help you, and what's the ceiling projection. And so that's really what it is. It becomes a situation where you're like, I like all these guards. All of the guards are really good. I think they're all going to be pros. The question is, with the saturation of so many guards that are still trying to make it, who have yet to make it, who are fighting in these roles as third-year, fourth-year pros, new guys coming in who probably project to be just as good as them, some a little better, some a little worse. But what you're seeing is just a wave of so many combo guards shooting, scoring point guards, 6'4" to, from 6'2" to 6'5" guys that play the same position. It just becomes a situation where you have to wonder who's going to be able to slot in on these teams and for how long. And if my team needs a forward, do these guards stand out enough to where I can bring them in and expect to get the most out of them as draft picks? And I just think when you have that many questions, it becomes a situation where you're in the environment where teams may pass on some of these guards. A lot of these guys, especially within the range that we're talking about, between 6 and basically 12, I think a number of these guys could potentially fall to the back end of the first round, maybe one or two of them at the early second round, depending on what, again, is there, for which we have to do homework on this channel. I don't know yet. But I'm probably going to take a forward if I already got a couple prospects or a couple guards. My star's a guard. Some of my back-end guys are guys that were drafted 3 years ago who were in the same position as these guys about to be in. Why am I going to use another draft pick on another one? You know what I mean? Not to say that they won't stand out or won't be better, but like it becomes a situation where it's like, all right, I got Nick Smith, I got Kobe Buffkin, and now I'm supposed to bring in Philon. I'm supposed to, I still got Marcus Smart. Still, as a Laker fan, it just becomes a situation where it's like, even if I like Philon, I like Nick Smith too. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of teams, and I mean most of the teams in the NBA, kind of had that same dynamic. Now somebody's going to take these guards, and somebody's going to put them on the bench and make them fight it out with other guards. But I think what it ends up doing is it saturates guards that would likely do well with opportunities into the G League and into situations where they feel like they could probably do better overseas, getting more playing time instead of sitting on the back of a bench waiting for a Marcus Smart to roll an ankle so they can have an opportunity, waiting for something, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And so that's what I'm concerned about. I think a good portion of the teams in the NBA have a Nick Smith, have a Kobe Buffkin, have a Marcus Smart, have a Luka Doncic or something. They have their guard parts, positions solidified to where it becomes a situation where it's like, all right, if you don't blow me away, you're going to fall into the pack and you're going to be a journeyman just off the strength of so many players playing your position. And if I understand that to be the environment, then I'm probably just going to use my draft pick a different way and just go with a center, go with a shooting guard, a small forward with length, or trade the pick, that kind of thing. So I think these players are either going to go to teams that love them in their range, or potentially could fall out of their range, not for any reason other than the environment itself. Just makes for guards being a bit less valuable right now, in my opinion, or more plentiful to find all over the place. So you got to fight. If you're a guard, you got to fight. You got to stand out from the next guy. When you get your opportunities in the NBA, you got to blow up and luck has to be on your side. Every shot got to fall. Every defensive play got to be sound. It's just a small margin of error based on so many young guards still being in a position to contribute and and compete is the word I'm looking for. So I think Philon's going to find himself in that situation. He's going to be another guy. I mean, if I'm being honest, just another guard, man. And maybe if he gets in the right situation, he can stand out. Maybe if he gets in the right situation, he'll pan out. But the reality is, based on the little I've seen, he's just going to fall into the range of all the rest of them guards that I mentioned already, who are really solid. And if there were more teams for them to play on, they could probably stand out. And if they get the right role, they could probably be pretty important. But it just becomes a situation where it's like, all right, what's the difference between that guy, what makes any of these people really stand out? And I just don't know if the answer is anything they can do about that. I don't know if there's anything they can do about that. Just a lot of good guards, man. And nobody wants to play small ball, really. I mean, small ball doesn't work. So it's like if you're going to load your team full of guards, there's not enough positions for them. Only want two of them on the floor at once. If anybody stands out, becomes a star, they're going to get 35, 40 minutes. So it's like, why am I using a lottery pick on a guard unless he can play multiple positions, is incredible in one thing or several things? You know what I mean? But like, it just becomes a situation where it's all about fit, position of need, plentifulness of what it is you already have in place versus what it is you can do, and then your ability to stand out once you get to your situation. And so I think guards are going to slip in the draft, and it ain't going to be for no other reason. It's just too many of them. So that's my take on Philon. Like I said, I did very little homework on Philon. He has an interesting dribble package, in my opinion. Could shoot the ball, could really light it up. I think he could score well, and 6'4" is good size, solid length for the position. So he's going to be good off the strength of what he can provide, driving at the rim, stuff like that. But to me, it's just like, all right, Dennis Schroeder-ish type guy. A lot of things are outside of his control that are going to have to fall into place in order for him to make it, in my opinion. And I feel that way about most of these guards. If they're not like incredibly tall or shoot like crazy or defend and shoot and play make, you got to be really, really special right now at the guard spot, in my opinion. And I don't know if that's begun to be realized, because sometimes I'm a year early on certain things. So the field may not very well see it that way, but over the next 3 years, as more draft picks come in with more guards, that's going to be the situation, I think. That's why expansion is so important. I said it's going to benefit the guard spot more than anybody. So that's my loose take on Philon. Definitely go do your own homework on this player. You may fall in love with him. I think he's going to be good. It's not like he has any real deficiencies that stood out that just make me say, yo, this should be somebody that pass on. If this were a draft full of forwards, I would feel very comfortable taking him in the lottery. But with a draft full of guards, he just falls in with the rest of the guards. And there are others that I like a little more personally based on what I've seen from them. So that's my take. I think Philon can be solid. I think he can be solid, but solid is not what I'm taking a top 12 lottery pick to be. I'm not taking a lottery pick to be solid. I'm taking a lottery pick to potentially pop, and that's ultimately my opinion there. So next up, Yaxel Lendeborg. Now Lendeborg is interesting. The negative about Lendeborg is his age, man. He's 23 years old. He's gonna be 24 when the draft comes around, I think. That's old as hell for the NBA draft. that's like ancient. You are a pop. You are unk when you step out on that floor at that age. But what he does is so many different things, and he has excellent length for his position. He's a power forward, I believe, at like 6'10", but he has like a 7'7" wingspan. And this guy can shoot the three some, 35% shooter from behind the arc. And obviously, an excellent shot blocker. Catch lobs, high motor, can also put the ball on the floor, big body. He reminds me of a guy like Derek Favors with a bit more wiggle to him, more speed, more ball handling because of the height and the length. That's what came to mind is Derek Favors. This dude can play make. So there's some Draymond in there, some Scotty Barnes in there. I've heard him compared to guys like P.J. Washington. I thought an interesting comp was, what's his name? I can't think of the name now, but the guy that couldn't fly back in the day. He had the mental illness that made it so that he didn't feel comfortable flying, and then he went on to have a controversial social media career. But before that, he got drafted to the Rockets and was a dog at the same position this guy has some of the same strengths as he did. This dude was a problem. I just don't remember his name, but yeah, he was a dog. I really liked that player. Too bad they weren't able to make his career work in the NBA, but he was extremely talented and he fit in a lot of situations. This guy, Yaxo, reminds me of him a little as well. So yeah, I think Yaxo is a hell of a piece. Now for me personally, I'm a little wary about taking a guy that age in the lottery. Why? Because I got Dalton Connect fatigue. Dalton Connect was an older lottery pick. The Lakers happened to land him after everybody else passed on him at 17. They passed on him for a reason, and we just so happened to get him. And since the previous year we passed up on a guy who they did that with and kind of regretted it, we decided to take this particular player. And through 2 years it has been very bad for us. Dalton Connect has been very, very bad for the Lakers. So when you consider Dalton Connect's like 25 years old now, second year pro that struggled to hell, it's like a lost lottery pick more or less. It wasn't a lottery pick for us, it was 17, but the point is you have a first round pick, you needed to pop, and you just aren't able to get nothing out of that piece. It's hurting us now, to be honest with you. If he was who he was supposed to be, we'd have an entirely different dynamic. But because he busted out basically and doesn't have any upside, because in theory his age already is who he's going to be, you feel really uncomfortable about bringing a guy in who's older, especially with such a valuable pick as what Yaxo is likely going to go, which is probably between 9 and 15. But with what Yaxo can do on both sides of the floor, making others better, getting easy buckets, stretching the floor, affecting the defense, rebounding the ball, he really has a bunch of different things about him that you love. And on top of that, he started the game late and got better really, really fast. And when I think of a dynamic like that, I think of Joel Embiid. He started late and then had like some outer worldly genius about his ability to learn and apply what he's learned at a high level. Just like Michael Jackson, obviously not sports, but like he was like that. He learned quick and then master fast and then go out there and just display what it is he basically picked up yesterday as if he mastered it already. That's kind of what they described in a way that Yaxo was able to do in such a short period of time, was pick up so many different skills that affect the game in so many different ways, and starting playing ball at like 20 years old or something like that. So that is an extremely special gift. And from last year, which was his junior season, because he's been in school for all 4 years, he went from a second round pick to playing his way up into lottery phase. I listened to a conversation that was done 6 months ago, and they were talking about if he's going to take the next step. At that point, they were talking about him as a second round pick, but if he was going to take the next step, he would need to get better defensively, and he would need to shoot better. Well, you fast forward to where we are right now, his Michigan team is in the national championship, and he shot well, and he's been a lockdown defender. So it's like, yo, this guy is getting better fast. So if you're going to take into account his age, you got to also take into account the jump that he's made in such a short amount of time and how late he started playing the game. Going forward, if he continues to make those jumps, you might be looking at a Hall of Famer. And you don't care how old he was. And when you look at how old he is, you pair him to what you would expect guys at his age to provide, and he's on par with them because of how many different things he affects on the basketball floor and how well his size should translate to the NBA floor. So it's like, let's say you bring him in and you're looking at another 24-year-old who's been in the league for like 3 years. He, in theory, should be able to do what they're able to do. So it's not like he's playing underneath his age. And it's not like you don't have evidence to show that he's going to make significant jumps from here. So it balances out to where you feel like, all right, we can live with the fact that he's a lottery pick because of these very special and unique circumstances. And when you talk about a 7'7" wingspan on a big body forward, and the winning factor at college, and the fact that he stayed in school, he should be more mature, ready to go, does play both sides of the floor, does make others better with the passing gift, can stretch the floor at that size, can be an undersized guy who should, in theory, be able to bang with people a little bigger than him. That is so valuable in this league. I think it balances itself out to where you look at him as an extremely unique case that you're comfortable taking a chance on in the lottery. I think his age is going to affect his draft positioning, but maybe not by as much as what you would expect. I think he still goes in the lottery. I think he probably goes 11, 10, something like that. For what it is that I've seen, especially when I look at some of these guards and I don't think that they're quote unquote special, I will consider taking him over some of those guards, man. I would feel very, very confident that taking him over Philon with what it is that I've seen makes a lot more sense for this league, because you're not going to find as many players who can do what he does. You're just not. Even if Philon projects to be a little better, I don't know that he does, you're still going to find a million Philons. You're not going to find very many Yaxels. You're just not. They're not there, and that's the point. If there were more Yaxels and less Philons, then I would adjust my thinking and tell you, yo, we need to get the guard because there ain't too many of them. But the reality is, you can find a Philon in a lot of different places with respect to him. You can find his piece. You're going to need that 7'7" wingspan, 6'10", 230, whatever, 240 guy who can put the ball on the floor and basically play like Draymond with a better jump shot and more likely to just block shots. Like, this dude has some special stuff to him. So for me, he's the type of guy you trade up to make sure you secure, especially if you're a team that's trying to get over a hump as a contender, in my opinion. If you're trying to get over the hump as a contender, or if you're a team that's ready to exit your rebuilding phase, you can get this player in place and he can make a lot come together. I like him in a situation like Charlotte, since they like the Grants, and they had a Kogi for a second. They're always looking for that type of piece. I think he would be great there. Fits right with what they want. They loved PJ Washington. He can be something like that for them. And the thing that I think Yaxel actually benefits greatly from what I was listening to, is the size of the center that is now in place. Last year they had a center that didn't quite provide the rim protection help and the rebound and all that. And he was a second round prospect because he was forced to kind of take on more duties based on that person's limitations. The guy that they got in place right now is a much bigger 6'7", 3 center from what I understand in Michigan, and he plays power forward next to this guy, and it makes for an easy tandem. So for me, I would try to duplicate that if I'm bringing Yaxel in, to say, I want to make sure I have a Wemby already in place. I want to make sure I have a Rudy Gobert next to him. I want to make sure I have some type of shot blocking, big body presence to try to maximize what he already thrives with versus what it is that he's shown that he may have struggled with. So Memphis is an interesting place for him to go, given the fact that they got that big body center in place that I can't think of his name, but y'all know he is like 7'5", 7'4" guy. I would want Yaxel to have somebody like that next to him. And since Yaxel can play from behind the arc some, you feel confident that the spacing should not at all be a problem with him on the floor. If he couldn't shoot, you would want him to be a 5, and he's a little undersized for that. So that's the only thing. I want him to be the PJ Washington quintessential for most teams, especially since he can put the ball on the floor some, especially since he can guard players. He's a little faster than people think. He has a good motor. And so you could get away with putting him on bigger, slower 3s, traditional 4s, that kind of thing. So this is a Swiss Army knife. A Swiss Army knife with hyperactive learning ability. You know what I mean? That is something special, man. If he was younger, he'd probably be in the top 5. His skill set and the uniqueness of his position and size may make it so that somebody takes him in the top 5. Although I wouldn't, personally. I wouldn't. I have my top 5 pretty much solidified. But, yeah, Yaxel's definitely one of those guys that I say, man, depending on my situation, I think he could be the perfect piece for it. That's what I have to say. Yaxel is just, he affects the game in so many different positive ways, and he's proven himself to be a good piece to a winning situation. And if you have complementary pieces next to him that accompany what it is that he does, he could be a part of something very special. I think of a team like Boston who would love to have him. My Lakers should be trying to tear down hell and earth to try to get to him. The Dallas Mavericks would be great, although they need a center, so that doesn't necessarily equate. Actually, they do. They just need to get their centers healthy. But I think that would be a good situation to have him play alongside Cooper Flagg. That could be the makings of a very special defense. As I mentioned, Minnesota backing up Juju in the short term. That could be interesting, especially since they're getting that young center shot blocker in place in the future that they drafted last year in the first round out of France. I could see them pairing together and being spectacular. I think Phoenix would be an interesting spot for him since they have Dunn in place and Malawach in place and Fleming in place. He could fit in that rotation and just be impossible to deal with. So there's a lot of situations that I think Yaxel could be good in. That might be a little bit of a logjam though, Phoenix low-key. But I just think of compounding so much defensive, offensive stretch the floor, defensive shot blocking presence, run the floor with speed, defensive-minded team. I just would love to see him in that type of situation. Houston could definitely use him for certain. They could use what he brings to the table. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a lot of teams. It's a lot of teams that I think in Memphis would love to have him. As I've already mentioned, I think he fits that grit and grind mentality. He should probably fit that very well. So that's the thing. Like when I look at Yaxel, it's like, yo, man, I think he fits in a lot of teams. And because he's an older rookie, he should in theory be more mature, should in theory be ready to work, and should in theory be a nice cog to a regular rotation for most NBA teams. So that's my take on Yaxel. I'm high on him. I temper my expectations because of the Dalton Connect fatigue. Older guys just tend to scare me away this early in the draft. But when you can do all the things that he can do, you got to put an asterisk there and just say this might be a special case. Very special case. So looking forward to seeing what he can do in Michigan, man. Some of my favorite players in this draft suddenly just happen to be playing in this Final Four, man. Illinois has got some guys. Now that Michigan is in place, they got a guy. Of course, we're going to get to see Burries in here as well. So when I saw the Final Four names last week, I didn't know of most of these guys. Now that I know who they are, I kind of want to watch these games, see how these dudes perform under the pressure and the bright lights. But yeah, you could see certain players just fit the cogs of winning cultures. And I think what you're seeing with some of these guys in this Final Four, some of the best players in this Final Four, should in theory translate to them being that type of player in the NBA, in my opinion. Some of these guys, they're going to fit in a lot of situations. They're going to help in a lot of situations. And I'm very, very intrigued. So that's what I got to say, man. Philon, it's going to be a battle. Try to stand out, try to solidify yourself in this league. Things got to work out. The role, all of that has to work out. He may very well be very special, but it's going to be hard to showcase that. It's going to be hard to showcase that for any guard that doesn't absolutely stand out in this draft. And so I'm hesitant to use a lottery pick on a player who has to fight that hard just to make a team. You know what I'm saying? And so that's my take on that. I'm going to take the forward. So that's pretty much what I got to say, man. BDL 44. I thank y'all for watching. I'm out.